Hey guys, it's Marshall Tingle with your Superior Ag Insurance Ringside Report for this past week of October 2nd through the 8th. Just want to say, welcome to fall. I don't know how it's been at your house, but it's been pretty chilly here in the mornings at my house. The last two mornings, there has been frost. I don't know if that's everywhere, but it has been at my house. Now, at the same time, it's also getting daggone warm still in the middle of the day. I mean, it's 77, 78, some places probably 80 degrees by the time you get to the mid-afternoon. Now, also, another sign of fall. Harvest is right in the middle. Everybody's getting swinging, or they're right in the middle of harvest. There's tractors and combines everywhere in these fields trying to get this fall crop in and up, so to speak. So that's a big sign. Now, also, you're seeing bigger runs of cattle through your barns. You know, we said last week pretty strong numbers. This week we're up again as far as your total receipts through your auction markets, but it's up drastically higher than it was this time last year. This time last year. So let's talk about that real fast. So across your auction markets this past week, we sold 21,404 head of cattle. Now, if you compare that to last week, that's only about 1,100 head higher than it was last week. So nothing too crazy. Now, let's compare that to this time a year ago. 5,200 head higher than it was this time a year ago. So that's a pretty significant increase in numbers. Now, let's talk about what these calves look like coming to town. I know pretty much every barn that I've been into and pretty much every barn that I've talked to somebody at, you walk into them, you walk close to them, you hear a lot of bawling calves. And that's to be expected. It is fall season, and it's time everybody pulls the calves off their cows. That's pretty typical, but it's starting to reflect too in your market. And you're starting to see a more continued downward slide over this past week, and some of it's buyer demand, buyer selectivity. There's a whole lot of other factors going into it. But we won't go all the way in depth. But like I said, you're starting to see a bigger impact in a slide back on these cattle strictly because it is fall time and the fall kind of cattle, so to speak, these unweaned, fleshy bone cattle. Let's talk about what they're trading for. So they called your feeder steers and heifers this week $2 to $8 lower. That's a pretty big spread. Now, they also said there are some instances of sharply $10 lower. Now, that's a pretty significant number. We haven't really seen that as much as far as the sharply down by 10. But you're starting to see it in your auction markets. That's pretty much on par. Now, the good news is your yearling market hasn't been affected too much. Last 2 weeks, this week's on par with last week. Your yearling market's going to be pretty much steady. We're back a little bit from what your CME feeder cattle index is, but as a whole, it's pretty steady and pretty consistent. There is some range in them, but your top end, your high end, your bell ringer, so to speak, or your auction toppers are still staying right there at a pretty consistent level. But let's talk about what these little lightweight cattle are worth. So your full weight steer cattle this past week, you're looking at a range of $1.48 to $2.13. So on the high end, that's still pretty strong. The 48 is where you start to see your biggest difference on these cattle. Now, what are they going to average? You know, I've done a little bit of math on them the last time. I'm going to call this a pretty group average on these. I'm going to give you a dime spread on your full weight cattle. I'm going to say anywhere in the $1.80s, from low 80s all the way up to $1.89. But I'd say that dime of $1.80 is going to catch the biggest percentage of them. Now, your 5-weight steer cattle, you're looking at $1.37 to $1.94. Still a huge spread on these cattle. But I'd say on average, you're going to be looking right at about $1.70 on those. So just kind of give you what we're seeing as far as they're trading through. Now, like I said, you're still going to see some high end on your weaned up and preconditioned cattle, and you're still going to see some low end on your fleshier balling type calves, and that might be worth the risk. You know, with this being a 57 to 60 and change cent spread on there, if you've got a little bit of cowboy to you and you know how to baby a calf, so to speak, it might be a good time to jump in there and see if you can't gobble up a few of these little small things and put you a package of them while they are cheaper. If you can, if you know how to cowboy them, so to speak, there might be some money to be made there. Just an idea for you. Now, let's talk about what these yearlings are doing. So your yearling cattle market, we're going to call them mostly steady, and they're pretty much on par. And I think even on your top end, they might even be more consistent than they were this time last week. Let's look at these 8-weights real fast. So let's start off here on your light 8s. Here's 66 head of these, all black steers, 824 pounds on the average, $1.74. Now, talk about your mid 8s. Here's 69 head of these. These are all blacks, 844 pounds on the average, $1.74. Pretty consistent. Now, here's where we see our drop. Once you cross over that 850 mark, you're starting to see a pretty significant drop on these to about the tune of $4.30 on these. So here's 58 head of these. These are all black steers as well, 879, $1.69.70. So still pretty consistent. You're still probably within a nickel of what your CME feeder cattle index is, nickel to 7. So still not too bad, especially since you're getting right close to that 9 900-pound mark. So let's talk about your heifers. So we don't talk about heifers too much, but I've got one really big standout set of these heifers. Here's 119 head of black heifers, 606 pounds on the average, $1.7250. So that's a really strong trade on a 6-weight heifer right now with everything going on. But let's talk about your CME feeder cattle index. So your CME feeder cattle index for the week has still been pretty steady and pretty tight. You're right there in that $1.75 mark till we got to about Thursday. Thursday and Friday you drop back. But again, not by too much. So let's talk about that real fast. So Monday the 3rd, your CME feeder cattle index was 175.67. By the time Tuesday the 4th rolled around, 175.58. Wednesday the 6th, 175.69. By the time we got to Thursday the 6th, that's where we kind of saw our drop. But if you do the math on it, it's really not that much of a drop. $1.7492. So within 70 cents, it's still pretty close on your, just for a drop of the day. Now, here we go again. Another drop on Friday, but not by much. Only about 30 cents on these cattle. So Friday the 7th, you're looking at 174.61. So I'd say all in all, your CME feeder cattle index is hanging in there pretty tight and pretty strong as, compared to everything else going on around. Just about every barn that you're talking to, they're seeing a decrease on these cattle. Every state you're talking to, you're seeing kind of a decrease on these cattle. And it's just some supply and demand. You've got some issues going on with your corn deal right now as far as transportation, as far as getting it shipped out. Your corn boards are down, your soybean boards are up. There's so many different variables in this, but I don't think it's just us in the state of Kentucky that's all in the same boat. I think we're all in it together as far as this decrease in the market. That's going to be coast to coast. That's just pretty much what's going on. Now, let's talk about if you have any questions about an LRP policy. Right now might be a great time to get them in. Like I said earlier, there might be some money to be made. If you can risk it and cowboy it and know how to baby some of these little light calves, 60 cents margin, 60 cent slide, so to speak, in one weight category is a pretty good slide, and there might be some money to be made there. You know your program, you know your management strategy, you know how to do it best. But if you need LRP policy, a livestock risk protection policy, to help you cover some of your bases on these cattle, now would be a great time to do it. So if you have any questions on LRP policy, a livestock risk protection policy, feel free to reach out to us. Call us at Superior Ag Insurance. Call Ian Thomas, 859-613-2453. Check us out on the web, www.superioragins.com. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.